This podcast is sponsored by the new edition of the Bible for testing homes, Home Performance Diagnostics, the guide to advanced testing, with the latest tools and techniques that prove you're worth the extra money. More at homeperformancebook.com. Enjoy. Welcome to the Building Performance Podcast from Green Dream Group in Chicago. I'm Corbett Lunsford, and today we are in Venice, Italy, at the University IUAV of Venice. It's essentially the Architectural Institute. We are with Piercarlo Romagnoni, who is a full professor, and Francesca Cappelletti, who is an assistant professor. Both of them are in the Environmental Technical Physics Department, and if you have trouble boiling that down because they like to make things complicated in Italy, it is the Building Performance Department. Thank you both so much for being on the program today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can you describe, we're walking around Venice and we see buildings that are very beautiful, but they're falling apart because there's salt water all over everything. First of all, you are based in Venice, and yet there's a problem with trying to do what you do in Venice. Is that correct?
Yes, it's quite difficult to make buildings more performing. Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Because of aesthetic characteristics of buildings, because they are historical buildings. Here in Italy you have some regulations, so we cannot much modify buildings.
So you come along and you say, you know what I'd like to do is wrap that building in insulation. Can you even say something like that in Venice, or is that's totally out of the question in Venice for sure? Is it out of the question in most of Italy, covering up the outside of a building?
In Italy, the problem of insulation is very important now, starting from 10 years, more or less 10 years ago, when a European directive suggested to better insulate our building. But in Venice, in Florence, in more or less in Rome, yes, is a very large amount of old building, so the problem of insulation in a building envelope is very important. Important because we have a strict requirement for our soprintendenza. Is the
like historical preservation?
Yes, is from the Ministry of Cultural Heritage that have an office that is completely involved to the building preservation, the historical building preservation. So they have the last word on all the requests about the restore of building. So if you ask to restore this building, for example, you can to prepare a design, but your design must be examined by the Soprintendenza in Venice. Then Soprintendenza decide if the design is correct or not. It is very complicated because we can choose some important way to reduce the energy amount, but if Soprintendenza say not, is not.
In the States, we have this problem with solar panels. If you have a building that's historic and you say, I would like to put some solar panels on this, they say, absolutely not. It's going to look ridiculous. We don't want it to look energy efficient. Here, we are sitting in an office right now that is very nice. It's got all plaster, whitewashed, very beautiful, but there is no place to put wiring. So you've got this kind of molding that's around all of the corners of the walls that carry the wiring for the electricity and the Ethernet. And then also there's no place to put HVAC. So you've got more problems, not just the solar panels. How do you deal with that in trying to make buildings better, but you can't touch the building envelope and you can't touch the HVAC system? Francesca, please.
I can answer as an architect. Something we can do, for example, we can replace a window. Now at the market we have many kinds of glazings, for example, glazing systems, and the performances are improving. So in this respect we can make something. We also have some new plasters which are much more thermal resistant.
Are you speaking of plasters that are insulating or plasters with the phase change? I know that you've got drywall here that can do that, yes?
Okay. There are also phase change materials, yes, but Well, here in Venice, probably we won't use phase change materials.
Because
But we can use...
How much of a thermal effect does it have to use? I mean, plaster is only...
Not so much.
Just whatever you can get, basically.
Yeah.
Interesting. The windows, you brought up the windows. All of the windows that I've seen here are the beautiful, typical European windows that open two ways. They can be casement or they can be kind of an awning type window that comes in and turns into a little transom. Very nice. The window sizes clearly have been reconsidered to install these windows. Do you cut new sizes for windows, or...?
It is impossible.
Piercarlo has pulled up something on the internet here. Piercarlo, what would you like to... He was rummaging around with his laptop.
Here is an example of installation of photovoltaic system in the roof of the Sala Nervi. Is the room in which the Pope have the audience in Rome. There was built in the middle of the 19th, but the old roof...
Did you say it was built in the middle of the 90s or in the middle of the night?
No.
Probably both.
Perhaps. This was the old roof.
So you're saying that they went in the middle of the 90s and put solar panels all over the Pope's house, essentially, just like they would in the White House. But you can't actually see this from the street. It looks like it's hidden by the parapet. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, but not exactly, because Vatican City is not Italy. So it was easy.
So in the Vatican, they don't have all this historic preservation, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, they're interested because they are interested. Yeah.
That's so I'm curious, because Italy is known for design, right, worldwide. Is the fact that you take so much time designing products to deal with the fact that you can't... This is fixed. It seems like these buildings are here and you can just kind of patch them, but you're not doing anything with them because no one's going to let you tear them apart and do new things with the buildings. So you have to have products that can make up for challenges and opportunities that the buildings represent. Do you think that that's true?
It's quite complicated because we love to complicate our situation, especially in the field of cultural heritage, because we have the possibility to choose a more direct way in order to design a product, for example, equipment, for example. We can study new kind of equipment for the museum, for the churches or so on, but it's quite impossible. We try here to design new heater for a church, and it is not particularly a good product. This is Santa Maria in Trastevere. Is a very old church in which we have a wooden ceiling.
This church that we're talking about in Rome, people have been coming into it for 1,000 years, and they have not had heaters until the last century. Why are we different that we need heaters in the space where they made do without it for 900 years or so?
We have two kind of problems. The people ask to stay inside the church, inside the museum, inside more comfortable. And you have the problem for the priest, the monk. They request specific for to have inside some temperature. For example, in the Alps, we have some church in which inside the church we have, or inside the building, we have 5 degrees. It's not possible to stay here.
It's like a work safety regulation at that point. Like you're working in this church and you need to have it be warm because that's your job, and so your employer should protect you ultimately.
In Italy now, the new buildings are built with heating floor. Heating floor system, yes. Heating floor system are very common choose for the new building.
Is there a reason for that? Since you're an engineer, I would imagine.
It's quite complicated because, in my opinion, we have a lot of problem with control of the indoor air quality. Usually, the new buildings are very sealed. So it's
airtight.
Tight, yes. And so is quite complicated to have only performance in heating or cooling without control ventilation. Especially in Alps, in which we have the value of the indoor humidity too high or too low. It is difficult to have a middle value. We have tried to have some diagnostic in timber building, and we have measured the value of the indoor air humidity was very, very low. When the people use fire for cooking or in bathroom, they have the value too high.
It spikes when they use combustion.
Yeah, then they have the necessity to have a ventilation. And it was not usual until 5 years ago. Yeah.
We're talking about new buildings at this point,
yes,
right?
Yes, for new building. This is now the new building. They are built with a heating panel and mechanical ventilation in order to control heat recovery system and in order to control also the air quality, the air humidity inside. So we have a path very slow in order to have energy saving, and now energy saving and indoor air quality and comfort.
Well, we like
for residential building, it was very easy to find solution. The school is very complicated because we need the space for duct system and for other building offices, and I think it is very easy because they usually adopt all air system.
It's really interesting. Piercarlo walked us into this university, and we walked into a entry hall through a door, and there was a heater on the left that's embedded in a concrete wall, and that's something that you had to kind of figure out how that's going to work and where the line set is going to go and all that. But then we walked through into the central courtyard, and there's no door between the entryway and the central courtyard. So you've got all these very open floor plans, like where you've got the atrium, essentially, that's open to the outside, and you have to design an HVAC system to work when there's no door on this room. It's really amazing to me. So you have the struggle of the space for the HVAC system. How do you do HVAC in a city like Venice? That is the big question, the $1 million. Who can figure this out? If you can figure this out, write into.
You can see the Google map and then control.
I mean, essentially, you're using tankless water for the most part. Everyone has their own tankless water heater. Is that correct?
Yes, water system is used in Venice. Air system is used in hotels here, Santa Marta, in our university, but. All air or mixed is quite difficult because the problem of that duct system is too big to be solved in each situation of Venice. Each building is solution.
So you need local experts to look at each individual building and figure out.
Local expert and then brainstorming between different experts. You can have the expert restoration, cultural heritage, historic, then architect, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering.
Do those people all speak to each other well in Italy? In the States, we have a hard time making them have a conversation with each other. Is that the same here?
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes, yes.
It's quite difficult.
Yeah.
Now, I would assume, since you're a researcher, Francesca, for this kind of thing, do you spend a lot of time going into buildings and trying to put together a plan for making it better?
No, it's not really my work.
What does your work entail?
My research is focused on simulations.
Once you have simulated a building and you've actually then fixed it, or someone has gone in and fixed it, do you have a lot of monitoring systems that prove that what we simulated actually worked in real life?
We are also working on it. We are trying to calibrate our simulations by means of monitoring. We are also studying some schools.
Like this one? Or you mean like kind of grade
universities?
schools?
No, primary schools
Okay.
and secondary schools.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Because we had the opportunity to speak with some administrations, and they had this need to monitor schools.
In the U.S., there's a craze about mold in people's breathing spaces, in their workplaces, in their homes. And specifically, I think it goes back to one particular very well-publicized lawsuit in the early 2000s. It was basically one house had black mold, and now it's a big deal in the U.S. Is mold a really huge concern for people working and living in Italy right now? Or is it kind of like, it's there? I mean, these are old buildings, and I just don't know what the relationship is with air quality. You keep bringing up air quality, but specifically in relation to tight houses. What if the houses are leaky? Are people a lot less picky?
Especially for commercial and school in Italy. Because in Italy we have measured that the indoor air quality inside school is not so good. I think it's very poor.
It's not so good, is it?
No, it's not so it's very poor.
Okay. But nobody has raised a huge fuss about it in the media, it seems like.
The media.
Okay, so the fact that we're confused about this right now means that there is no issue in it. In the States, it's all over the news all the time. It's a big, somebody has mold in their house. It's like, oh my gosh, everybody talks about it.
Yeah?
Yes. So they seem very surprised. Their eyebrows are raised.
Really?
So tell me about water.
No,
not in Italy.
No.
Tell me about water in Venice. How is the battle against salt water going? What do people do to stop the salt water from tearing the city apart?
I think it is not a battle. It's
not a battle.
It's
yes.
not a battle. People live with the water.
With water.
And don't care so much.
It's expensive, though, to keep fixing these buildings.
It's expensive to have commercial activities, to maintain a building, to move inside the city because water. If you take a taxi or you try to take a gondola, please try. And so it's very expensive to live in Venice with water. But Venetian people usually have a boat. So if I live in Venice, I have my boat, I take my boat in the morning, and can I go to work, for example, in the other corner of the city. So we live with water, yes.
Yeah. So people who live here make money from the water, and they've gotten used to it. But you guys are building people, and we know that water, and especially salt water, is not good for buildings.
Yeah.
How does it do what it does to buildings?
Mainly the damage on plaster. And then the damage for the brick, also for the ground floor. After the flood, when the water
Drains down.
Yes. Yeah. You can find the damages on normally you have to clean the ground.
Okay.
But also you have the possibility to leave the salt inside the porosity of the ground.
Interesting. Does it flood every year, or does it flood just once every
year?
Many times a year.
Many times a year. Specifically, I think you said earlier, in winter, right?
4 or 5.
It depends. I'm sorry, because I know here a map in which you can find the zone in which Venice are a particularly high level of the water. But for example, this zone, you can walk from the railway station until here without found water. But you can go until 1 kilometer along 10, come back, so a very long path. Some part of the island, the little island of Venice, they have a different level. So the building was built in a different period. So in some building, the water arrive until the door.
The threshold of the door.
Yes, the other building, you have the door 15 centimeter higher than
So in the people who have the houses that are on the higher islands are better off.
Different price If you want to buy a flat in the ground floor, yes, it's possible to buy with, I don't know the price correctly, but you have also
Much
for
less.
United States.
Yeah.
But if you choose the second, third, and so on, price
Goes way up.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What about a basement room? How much do those run here?
No.
And by the way, he's laughing not because there are not basement rooms, because there are, right? What do people keep in basement rooms in Venice?
The students, yes. Yes,
The students.
Yes,
Excellent. Because they're kind of smelly anyway. So what in the next 10 years, let's say, what are you excited about seeing in Italy as far as building performance?
This is the answer.
Oh, he's excited about testing.
Yeah.
Do you do testing now? Is there blower door testing, for example, required on buildings?
Is it required, for example, for Casa Clima building? Building
And Casa Clima, just to
Yes.
clarify for people who don't know, is a certification that's actually, is it code? It's required
Yeah.
in the Alps.
It is required in the Alps,
Okay.
in the city of Bolzano, in the other little town near Bolzano in the northern territory of Italy. For the diagnostic, we use usually the thermographic camera.
The infrared camera?
Yeah, especially for the historic buildings, could be very interesting in order to have a little more comprehension about the level in which the capillarity we can arrive.
With the capillary action
Yeah.
of the salt water up through. You showed me an impermeable layer as we were walking around Venice that they insert between the courses of brick. Is that something that's a new development in the past couple of years, or has that been going on for decades?
Well, it's not a new technology.
Yeah.
We have it since
20 years.
20 or so.
They change the material they use.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what kind of the plastic they use, but this technique were really used, I think, the last century, and now they are improve the performance of the materials. I think. I think that because I see the result. The new restoration are best performance.
Much more successful than the older material.
Yes.
That's very interesting. So hopefully the testing starts happening all over Italy, and if the testing starts happening, do you think people will care more about making themselves more comfortable and moisture controlled, that they want to be able to use the tools and techniques that you're developing to make themselves more comfortable?
In Italy, it is not usual to destroy the building and rebuild. We have an old building, is historical or not, where usually we choose to maintain the envelope and then to try to find the better solution. It's not so easy, could be very complicated, it could be very expensive. And the consequence, they are also in the thermal plant, in the ventilation plant, because it's not so easy to maintain the comfort condition as you decide for a new building, for example.
So you're saying that the HVAC systems typically are way more complicated than in a regular building?
Yes, it's complicated because we prepare a design, a perfect design, and tend to decide, the architect decide, no, it's not so interesting because we can to modify the visual of the facade. So we can...
Like, for example, a drop ceiling, which is the solution you've got in the hallway out here to run the ductwork in. But if they say, no, the ceiling has to be 12 feet tall, period, does the architect win generally?
I think it's not the architect, but maybe the owner of the building that decides finally. And owners now, well, they want to be more comfort. They want to spend
Less money on the energy. Yeah.
So architect can have. They have to convince the owner on what is the optimal solution. So the compromise between the money and the comfort
aesthetics.
and
That's
aesthetics.
interesting. So it sounds like people are already on
think-
your side, that you have the easier job than the architect at this point.
I think so.
Good.
My opinion is not a complication. It's the maintenance of the system and the building. It is in Italy, in my opinion, it is a big problem. Because if you have an old system, it could be very complicated to have energy saving in the maintenance or in the management. The control is not so easy to adopt electronic device in water pipeline in which you have a hole. This is the plant of the other building of my university, for example. Is never restored, this building.
Wow.
Yes.
And how old is it?
500.
500 years old.
Yes, say, more or less.
And it's never been restored.
Yeah, yeah. You have the structural problem, and when you decided to put inside all the system for fire safety and so on, for the new electrical system and so on, and then suddenly we have a crash in the pipeline for water from the second to the third floor. So we made to destroy the wall, to cut the pipeline, to stop the water flow, and then we have a without heating system for the next winter.
So essentially the boiler pipe from the second floor to the top floor broke, and so you have no boiler system to feed the radiators on the top floor?
Yeah. You can see the building is in front of Gran Canal, so it's a beautiful building. We have the painting in the wall in the second floor. It's beautiful, but you have the student inside.
That's interesting.
Very interesting, dangerous.
Well, it's, in the States, we're trying to convince people to stop building. People who build houses in the United States in the last 30 to 40 years have been building regularly for the life of the mortgage, which is the loan that you take out for a house. It's 30 years. So after 30 years, everybody expects that, we'll just tear this house down and we'll build another one. And so we're trying to get people to build for 100 or 200 years. But it sounds like you can actually go too far with that. And you built a house that is supposed to be 1,000 years old, and you built paintings into all of the plaster of the walls, and now you can't get in the walls anymore because it's so perfect and we can't do anything to the building. That's an interesting problem. This has been really fascinating. Thank you, Francesca, so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Piercarlo, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you to you. And we have a very interesting meeting today, a very interesting book. And I hope to see you also in Chicago and
wonderful
during the summer.
We will hopefully repeat this conversation and talk about more things about Italy in July. You have been listening to the Building Performance Podcast from Green Dream Group in Chicago. I'm Corbett Lunsford. Tune in next time.